On to the Sunday games. 1 o'clock game, you got the Pittsburgh Steelers in Atlanta. And, it's funny how the NFL makes the NFL just comes out with the schedule. And yet every week, it seems every game you could pick some underlying theme. Obviously, the Steelers go into Atlanta with Arthur Smith as their new offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith just for the last 3 years was the Atlanta Falcons head coach, and was criticized there for not being able to, do much offensively with what they had. They've got Drake London, they've got Bijan Robinson, they've got Kyle Pitts, although he was injured. They have a good offensive line, and Arthur Smith was ripped for being conservative and ripped for, you know, not giving the ball to Bijan enough, not producing good offense, not developing Spencer Ritter, and ironically, Spencer Ritter didn't even make it onto the I think the Cardinals. Right, he got cut. So maybe having a quarterback was always the bigger issue there. And obviously, the irony is Atlanta goes out and gets Kirk Cousins in the offseason for their new staff, and now everybody likes the Falcons as NFC South champions because of that. And hey, they might be right. Atlanta has a lot of good pieces. Atlanta looks like a good team. The Steelers, I personally was hoping they would go to Justin Fields early. I felt that the last 2 years I've watched a lot of Broncos tape, and there's something more than just regression with Russell Wilson. It looked to me that he was afraid to throw the ball into windows. He would only complete passes to wide open receivers, running backs coming out of the flat, or guys who were just wide open down the field. Anything else, he was afraid to pull the trigger on, and he just doesn't run like he used to. He's taken a lot of hits. He's had some injuries. Uh, you can understand the thought process here. The Steelers have built up their offensive line. They drafted Faltanu. Sayamalu has played well for them. I know he got hurt. We'll see how long he's out for. Broderick Jones was a first-round pick 2 years ago, play left tackle. They drafted the kid from, I love this center from West Virginia, Zach Frazier. So the Steelers are getting back to who they've always been, which is kind of a ground and pound team. Even when Roethlisberger was out there setting, passing records and throwing the ball all around, they were still always a tough team in the trenches, always a good offensive line. So I expect that offensive line and that running game, especially with Arthur Smith now in charge, to really power the team. And Najee Harris will probably have one of his better years. Jalen Warren was dealing with a hamstring injury. We'll see if he's able to play. But I think that they're going to get back to running the ball and doing it really well. But eventually, as I say in this league, you're going to have third down. And on third down, you got to throw the ball. And your receiver's not always going to be open. You gotta lead the receiver a little bit. You gotta be a quarterback. You gotta throw in the tight windows. And I just haven't seen that from Russell Wilson over the last 2 years. I think it's just only a matter of time before Justin Fields will become their quarterback. I don't know when. I can't predict. I'd have to take a look at the Steelers schedule and kind of say, oh, if they start off this or they start off that, then you could see Justin Fields maybe as early as, this week or that week. I mean, obviously Atlanta will be a tough game on the road. Then they go play Denver. They can win Denver, but it is tough for them to have to start two first weeks on the road. Then they got the Chargers at home. Chargers are a good team, not a great. You don't look at the Steelers and say you can't beat the Chargers. So with the Broncos and Chargers, they could start off, 2-1 if they lose to Atlanta. Then you got the Colts at Indianapolis. Then you got the Cowboys, Raiders, Jets, Giants. It feels like going into the bye week, which is week 9 for them. They could be 5-4. They could be 4-5. They have winnable games. But if Justin Fields, if Russell Wilson can't throw the ball, and they're a 2 or 3 win team going into the bye week, you could see a change being made there. Or if they lose their first 3 games, you could see a short leash on Russell Wilson and going with Justin Fields. I'm not telling you I think Justin Fields is some amazing, precision surgeon of a quarterback, but he's young. He's trying to prove himself. He can run more dynamically now at this stage of his career, and he's got a strong arm. So guys like George Pickens, who are really right now is their only receiving threat, along with Pat Freiermuth, the tight end, you would think that they would be able to better flourish if a defense was afraid of Justin Fields running, and that would present more opportunities in the pass game. I mean, there are other playmakers, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin. I mean, Calvin Austin Could be a good slot receiver, but he hasn't had anybody throwing in the ball. We'll see what he can do this year. Fourth round pick from a couple of years ago. Roman Wilson was a little banged up in training camp for them. He's their receiver out of Michigan, third round pick. I like him. Good route runner. Probably is a good complement to what George Pickens brings from a downfield presence, but they got to work him into the offense. And again, quarterback's got to be able to throw the ball. On defense, the Steelers have Patrick Queen now, Landon Roberts. They are the Steelers that you always remember the Steelers strong up front. Cameron Hayward, Keanu Benton, Ogunjobi. That's a good TJ Watt coming back from the injury. I mean, this is a good front six. It's a really good front six. I like it a lot. And of course, with Mike Tomlin presiding over them and Terrell Austin, defensive coordinator, they drafted a kid, Peyton Wilson, good linebacker, third round pick. Some thought he would go in the second round, early second round. Fast player. Wouldn't surprise me if he made an immediate contribution. Nick Herbig's been a nice story for them as a situational pass rusher at times. They obviously have two very good pass rushers in TJ Watt and in Alex Highsmith. So this defense will keep them in games. Minka Fitzpatrick's good safety. Joey Porter Jr., I said it last year when they got him in the second round, first pick in the second round, that they got a first round talent in the second round, and he played like it. He's a good player. Looks like they're going to work in a rookie nickel. So we'll see. Those guys tend to get picked on. It's tough to play rookie nickel as a rookie. Beanie Bishop, but they may have a big nickel package instead. It's a good defense. This defense will keep them in games. They'll rush the passer. They'll stop the run. Not a great lockdown secondary, but good enough with Porter and Fitzpatrick there to get by with having Dante Jackson as the other corner and Deshaun Elliott in the backfield. So this won't be easy. Obviously, for the Falcons, they've got Kirk Cousins coming back from the Achilles, and you never know how that first game's going to go. The 3.5-point favorites right now, which I think is a fair line. I've seen 2.5, so maybe it's up to 3.5. It's a fair line. Falcons should win. They've got more playmakers. Assuming Kirk Cousins is healthy, I don't think it'll be a cakewalk, but I think you'll see a huge difference with the Falcons' offense this year as long as Kirk Cousins comes back, impactful from that the Achilles injury. Drake London should be a breakout year for him. He's a really good receiver. They don't, Darnell Mooney opposite him gives them a nice deep threat. I'd like to see someone who works all three levels opposite London, but because London can do it, you can understand why Darnell Mooney is there to kind of be a clear out guy, a deep threat guy. I like that they brought in Ray McLeod from the Steelers, so he has experience. He can do a couple of things. They have a very good offensive line. Jake Matthews, Bergeron at left guard, Lidstrom at right guard, McGarry at right tackle. It's sort of it's a little bit of a lunch pail offensive line, maybe compared to the Eagles one, but it's a good one. And Kyle Pitts, this is the first time he's going to have a guy who can really throw the ball to him. And we'll see, obviously last year he's come back from the major injury. So we'll see if Kyle Pitts can sort of be unlocked in this offense. If he is, then you're not as worried about Darnell Mooney being the number 2, because really then Mooney's the number 3 behind London and Pitts. And obviously you're expecting a lot from Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson could be the key to that offense. We'll see. This is a new offensive play caller in Zach Robinson. He came over from the Rams, so he's a McVay, Shanahan style of offensive mind that should pay dividends for not only Kirk Cousins, but for Bijan Robinson. We'll see if they implement that wide zone blocking scheme that you've typically seen with those style of offenses. Bijan's fine for any offense, but it obviously would fit well in that kind of offense. And this could be a really good offensive team. It could be a very, very good offensive team if Kirk Cousins is healthy and is impactful. And remember, he's got Michael Penix staring over his shoulder, so that could motivate him a little bit. He clearly wasn't thrilled with the situation, but he is the starting quarterback. There's no question about it. I don't think that the Falcons are going to be in a rush to get Penix on the field. Thought it was smart of them, even if it was risky, to take Penix, downfield thrower, a lot of weapons here. So if Cousins isn't healthy, then we'll see. We'll see the rookie step in and see what he can do. But this should be a good offense. And, if you think the Falcons win the NFC South, I can't argue with you on that. Obviously, defensively, they finally got Grady Jarrett some help in the middle there. They have David Onyemata, who was with the Saints for a while. Good good three technique style of, he actually could play head up. He's a versatile interior lineman. They still have Contavious Street, Eddie Goldman, so they got some veterans on the interior. Uh, Lorenzo Carter is a pass rusher. Okay. Matthew Judon, that's the big pickup for them. Got him for a third round pick from New England. He'll come in with Zach Harrison and anchor their pass rush a little bit. They don't have the greatest pass rush in the world, and this could be a deficiency. It could be an area where they're looking at the trade deadline to increase an edge rusher. Judon and Jarrett give them two nice pass rushers. You'd like to see them have a little bit more around the edges, but they are very good. And they obviously in the secondary they've got Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. All the Eagles fans wanted Simmons. He went to Atlanta. It gives them a pretty good core of safeties there. AJ Terrell has been up and down as a corner. D. Alford as a nickel. Mike Hughes been up and down a corner. I mean, if you're going to worry about one part of this Falcons team, you worry about their ability to stop other teams. It's not a great defense. It's a good defense. They had a good defensive coordinator last year. He left. I believe Nielsen is now the defensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's known as a good play caller, good coordinator. So we'll see what they're able to do with their new defense. Raheem Morris is the head coach. Jimmy Lake is the defensive coordinator. Obviously, Morris is going to have his hands all over this defense, so that should help. I feel like this is the area of the team that might hurt them. Now, lucky for them, they're playing the Steelers week 1, and the Steelers just don't have a lot offensively. So I would look for Atlanta to win here. Cover the spread of 3.5. That might be tough. You got to win by more than the field goal. Steelers are going to bring a tough defense in, but I see the Falcons prevailing in this game. We go to Buffalo, where the Bills are going to host the Arizona Cardinals. Looks like the Bills are 6.5-point favorites. I think that's a fair line. A lot of newness on the Bills. I want to talk about this Arizona team though, because there's a lot of this was a tough team last year, and that's when Jonathan Gannon just taken over, and they wouldn't have Kyler Murray back. Wasn't fully healthy early on. They kind of had to make do with they had different quarterbacks in there on a weekly basis, and yet they were still a pretty tough out. They were a difficult team. Most of their losses were close losses. They lost their opener by 4 points to Washington. They lost by 3 points to the Giants. That was a game where they were up big and blew it. They lost to the Bengals by 14. Okay, that's a what you expect. Of course they had their share of blowouts. They lost to the Ravens by a touchdown, 31-24. We know they beat the Eagles later in the year. They beat the Falcons later in the year. They lost to the Texans, who were a good team last year, by 5. So you look up and down in their schedule last year, and you say, hey, you know what? Not a terrible team. Team that once they got Kyler Murray back started to score some points a little bit. They beat the Eagles 35-31. We all remember that. They lost to the Seahawks by 1 in the season finale. They scored 29 against the 49ers. Of course, they gave up 45 points in that game. So I'm not trying to sell you on the Arizona Cardinals this year being any kind of juggernaut, but they could be a very, very improved team from the 4 wins they had last year. Most people said Jonathan Gannon, what you didn't like about him as a defensive coordinator, you didn't have to worry about as a coach. Good leader, good communicator, a guy that guys can rally around. He got victimized by the early press conference too. I think he had one of those cringe moments about riding the bus and coming to work. But the Cardinals played for him last year. They played hard. And you look at what they got. They have Kyler Murray now for a full season. And they draft Marvin Harrison Jr., right? So that should be an automatic connection for them. Michael Wilson is a guy who Eagles fans found out last year could play a little bit in this league. And he'll be a nice receiver opposite Marvin Harrison Jr. So he'll be a guy that maybe people start to learn a little bit more about as the season goes on. Good player, I think, out of Stanford. Greg Dortch is that little slot receiver who can get open. But, we'll see how they move Harrison around. I think the main thing about the Cardinals is their offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, came in. And he came from Cleveland, and he established that same style of offense. They're going to run the ball, they're going to zone block, and then they're going to try to play action you. And now they've got a guy in Marvin Harrison Jr. who can pull that off and catch passes. And of course, Kyler Murray is a good player. And if you don't know who Trey McBride is, if you don't pay attention outside of the bubble of the Eagles or the Northeast, Trey McBride is a player that was a second round pick for them, 55th overall 2 years ago. And last year, he caught 81 passes for 825 yards on 106 targets and 3 touchdowns. I don't know if a lot of people realize how productive Trey McBride was in his second year. And remember, that's with the first 5 or 6 weeks of just, anybody throwing him the ball. I mean, they were running quarterbacks in and out of there before Kyler Murray came back. Now that once Murray came back, you started to see an instant rapport there. Paris Johnson was their rookie right tackle. He did a nice job. They moved to left tackle. It's not a great offensive line. They bring in Jonah Williams, right tackle. Interior is just okay. But this offensive line will be it'll be their bugaboo, but obviously with Kyler Murray's ability to run around and make plays, which he'll do whether he gets the blocking or not. He just that kind of a quarterback who just likes to get out of the pocket and has a really strong arm, use that arm. There'll be a problem for some defenses. And Paris Johnson's a nice, we'll see how he does at left tackle. He did a good job at right tackle. This was always in the works to move him to left tackle. James Conner, every year I think, man, James Conner can't keep this up at his age with his injury history. Well, guess what? He does. So I have to stop underestimating him. He's not a great running back, but he moves the chains in that offense. He's perfect for what they need him to do. Last year, what did he average? He averaged 5 yards a carry last year. 2 years ago, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry. And I didn't think that was very good. I wasn't very high on him last year. 2 years ago, he averaged 3.7. I'm sorry, 3 years ago, he averaged 3.7 yards per carry. For his career, he's 4.3, which is not great. But you know what? They gave him the ball a lot last year. He had 1,000 yards rushing. He had about 200 yards more receiving. So, and they drafted a kid in the third round, Trey Benson, who didn't have a great preseason. Now, maybe Benson will get more, as the season goes on, he'll get worked into the offense a little more. But right now, James Conner is their back, and he moves the chains for them. And with Kyler Murray in there, and Conner and McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., they can be respectable offensively. Explosive? I wouldn't say explosive. Respectable? Yes, respectable. And they were already starting to become respectable last year. Defense, it's not great. Needs help. They still have Budda Baker there. He never wound up getting traded. No real stars in the secondary, but they've always played tough. Again, Nick Rallis, who came over as the Eagles linebackers coach, along with Gannon, has done a good job with this defense. Dennis Gardeck has given them good snaps at outside linebacker. Kazir White has played for them. They don't have a ton of household names in the front side. I don't know how they're going to rush the passer really well. Right now, you're looking at, Zaven Collins, who was a first-round pick. In 2021, he's going to be an edge rusher. Dennis Gardeck, Bilal Nichols. I mean, these are guys who don't scare you. But again, LJ Collier, in the backup ranks. But again, they didn't have scary guys last year. Now the fun guy will be watched will be Max Milton. He's their rookie. Everybody who listened to Inside the Birds knows how much we loved him as a guy who played inside and outside. Great athlete. Played at Rutgers. Comes from a very athletic family. His brother Bo, wide receiver for the Packers. Max Milton should come in there, and it wouldn't surprise me if he made an instant impact on that secondary. So from a defensive standpoint, here's a guy who can come in and make some changes. I just don't think that they have enough to rush the passer and really scare an opposing quarterback. Now, and they have to contend with Josh Jacobs this week. And Jacobs, we all know he can do major damage. And sorry, Josh Allen. What did I say? Josh Jacobs. Josh Allen can do major damage as a quarterback. Allen's lost a lot, but I don't think that these losses are going to hurt the offense as much as others. No more Stephon Diggs, no more Gabe Davis. Well, that just gives an opportunity for Khalil Shakir to step in. I think Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, who really showed a lot of promise last year, could be a target monster. He's a guy who I think could put up Travis Kelce numbers playing with Josh Allen. So I would expect a big year too from Dalton Kincaid. They drafted the kid Keon Coleman. We'll see what he can do. Curtis Samuel comes over. He's always banged up. But they have a good offensive line. Deion Dawkins, Temple kid, good left tackle. I don't think Josh Allen is going to suffer from not having Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. I think he's going to play the game the way he always plays the game. I think that they're going to continue now with Joe Brady there to try to run the ball a little bit more and get James Cook more involved. And he's done a nice job. He did a nice job last year when he took over. Uh, Mac Hollins comes in and gives him a little bit of a reliable pass catcher, good special teams player. MVS is there. I just don't see I know some people think that the offense is going to really struggle. I don't. I think they're going to be pretty good, and I think their offensive line's pretty good. Even with their defensive losses, and with Von Miller not being what they were, I mean, they were a good defense last year with all injuries all over the place. They got one of the best nickels in the league in Teron Johnson. They have a good pass rusher in Greg Rousseau, and Daquan Jones. He was hurt. Ed Oliver, very good defensive tackle. AJ Epinesa is a nice player. I mean, this team has a good. Everything I said about Arizona lacking guys on defense, guys that you worry about. Well, I think the Bills have those kind of guys, and they have a coordinator in. I mean, let's be honest. It's really Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott is their defensive. He's their head coach, but he has his fingerprints all over the defense. And ever since he's been there, their defense has always played above expectation level. And they're good here in the front six. And if Von Miller can give you 50% of what he used to give you, then that just adds to the mix. Is the secondary great? No. They used to have a really good, when they had Micah Hyde and they had Jordan Poyer, they had two of the best safeties in the league. Now it looks like Damar Hamlin's going to step into a starting role, and Taylor Rapp is, a good player. Coverage has always been an issue with him. Rasul Douglas, same thing, good player, not great, but they always make it work. Sean, this is where Sean McDermott excels. So I like the Bills in this game against Arizona. It'll be a tough game. So they got to win. If you're 6.5-point favorite to cover, you got to win by a touchdown. Do they win by a touchdown? You know what I think they do? Even though I like Arizona coming back, I can see the Bills, being up 3-6 and then, adding that extra field goal or touchdown late to pull away. I'm not down on the Bills at all. I think they can win this division, even with some of the losses that they've had. All right, next 1 o'clock game, the Bears versus the Titans. Talk about two completely different teams now, remade teams. Bears are 4.5-point favorites already. The Bears. I know some people are expecting the Bears to make the playoffs. Caleb Williams is going to step in. You have to be excited about what they have offensively now. They signed DeAndre Swift from the Eagles. He had a nice year with the Eagles. He showed he could stay healthy last year. They got Roma Dunze in the first round. They have Keenan Allen to come play the slot. DJ Moore is, their big ticket wide receiver. Although by the end of the year, it wouldn't surprise me if Roma Dunze was really that guy for them. I think he's that talented. And obviously Caleb Williams, I think is going to listen, if he stays healthy and if he really plays within structure while also allowing his athletic traits to come through, there haven't been a lot of great Bears quarterbacks over the years, folks. So, I mean, if Caleb Williams winds up being what he's supposed to be, he could smash some Bears quarterback records, which again, not the hardest thing to do because there just aren't that many great, up and down the Bears history are there great quarterbacks. But Caleb Williams has an opportunity to come in here with all these weapons I mentioned. Cole Kmet as a tight end. But by the way, Gerald Everett got more run with the first team. He came over from the Chargers. You've seen him with other teams before, the Rams. Gerald Everett's a good player. And in this offense now, which is a Shane Waldron offense, he comes over from Seattle. You might see Gerald Everett get more time or split time with Cole Kmet at tight end there. Mercedes Lewis, veteran, improving offensive line. They've gotten what they've gotten out of Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins at guard. If he stays healthy, can play pretty well. Nate Davis, they brought him over from the Titans. At guard, Darnell Wright was their draft pick after they traded down with the Eagles and didn't take Jalen Carter. They did take Darnell Wright. It's a promising offensive line. Not great, but again, with the weapons that Caleb has and his ability to make plays out of the pocket, may not have to be great. Defensively, this is where the Bears are really going to hurt some opponents. I mean, they are good defensively. Ever since they got Montez Sweat, DeMarcus Walker is a nice young edge rusher that They wound up moving on from some other players to give time to decent on the inside. But Montez Sweat for them is really the guy that is going to rush the passer and cause some problems. They could use another edge rusher. It's true, it's fair. But when you look at what they have at the back end of their defense with Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards at linebacker, and maybe the best secondary in the league overall, uh, starts with their corners. Jalen Johnson is an elite corner, got an extension. Kyler Gordon, a very good nickel. Tariq Stevenson, good corner, second round pick from a couple of years ago. Jaquan Brisker, second round pick out of Penn State, nice safety that is going to complement with Kevin Byard, who, the Bears are banking on the fact that Byard was playing three different defenses last year, and he doesn't have to be great, just has to hold the fort down. They moved on from Eddie Jackson so they could sign Byard, and really it's Brisker and Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson give them a really good secondary. And those linebackers are fast, they're rangy. We know this about TJ Edwards. We know Edmonds is an incredible athlete. This is a good front seven. And that front seven should, if that's why I bring it back to Caleb Williams, go out there and play your game, but limit your mistakes. A lot of rookies make mistakes. They make overthrows. We all know about Peyton Manning, how many interceptions he threw as a rookie. Just limit your mistakes. Work with your playmakers. Get the ball to Adunze. Get the ball to Sweat. Get the ball to DJ Moore, to Keenan Allen. Take the layups when the layups are there. When they're not there, let your athleticism shine through and make the magic happen. We saw some of that in the preseason, but don't make mistakes because your defense will win you some games. The cold weather will win you some games when it gets to November and December. So for Caleb Williams, he just has to be a solid player. And if he winds up being above average first round pick and I really see a future franchise quarterback there, all the better for the Bears. The Bears will be really tough by the end of the year. And yeah, maybe they could push for a playoff spot. Tennessee is another remade team. They come in with a new head coach, Brian Callahan. They didn't waste any time getting him from the Cincinnati Bengals. They really wanted him and they got him immediately. And then they tried to give him as many new parts to work with on offense as possible. Sometimes you see that doesn't work out all the time when you're chasing guys in free agency. They go out and give big money to Calvin Ridley. They go out and sign Tyler Boyd. So that gives Will Levis, their second year quarterback, they go out and give money to Tony Pollard, who didn't exactly have the greatest year last year and was banged up with the Cowboys. But, you look at it in the bigger picture and you say, wow, Pollard's explosive. Calvin Ridley has been a very good receiver in this league. DeAndre Hopkins, he was a little banged up, but when healthy, has been a very good receiver who started to establish a rapport with Will Levis last year. Tyler Boyd come in. It just feels a little bit too piecemeal for me. But hey, at least they're building on the offensive line. They used their first round pick on J.C. Latham from Alabama. They used their first round pick 2 years ago on Peter Skronsky, and they signed. This is a good underrated signing. Their center Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos. So you look at that offensive line, which was so terrible last year, and you say from middle to left, you look pretty good right now. Cushenberry, Skronsky, Latham. All right. Dylan Radin's right guard. Nicholas Petit-Frere never really lived up to what he was supposed to be at Ohio State. He's their right tackle. So they've got some holes there on the right side of the offensive line, but they've got weapons. And the kid's got a rocket arm. We've seen Will Levis throw the ball. He's got a rocket arm. The big question to me is, can this offense come together with these question marks, with DeAndre Hopkins' age, with Calvin Ridley not having the greatest year last year with Jacksonville, with Tyler Boyd age, right? With Tony Pollard, injuries, and can he handle the workload? Will he mix in with Tyjae Spears a lot? Spears is a decent running back that they picked in the third round a couple of years ago. So the components are there for this team to be good if Will Levis can be good. But that's a big if right now. We saw what he could do last year in spurts. He has a rocket arm. He can get rid of the ball. But is he a good enough quarterback to be a guy that they can build their foundation around? I don't know that yet. And while they've tried to surround him with enough talent, that's why you look at the Titans right now going into this game. It's against Chicago. And I'm more prone to say, I like what the Bears got, even though I don't know enough about their quarterback too. I know about their defense. I know about their playmakers. I know that they've been building up on the offensive and defensive line. Whereas the Titans, yes, they've been building that line, but everything else seems like let's go out and throw money at this guy, at that guy, and see if it works. On defense, they do have a great defensive tackle, the Titans, and Jeffrey Simmons. They drafted Tavondre Sweat out of Texas. He's an enormous human being. We'll see how many snaps he can play. Kenneth Murray did not have a good year, a career, I should say, with the Chargers. He comes over to play linebacker. Again, when you're looking at pass rushers, you see Harold Landry. He's a nice guy. He's a good double-digit guy on the edges. But is Landry and Simmons enough in that front six, in that front seven, to really scare opposing offenses? We'll see. It doesn't feel like enough right now. Excuse me. But it does feel like they can hold their own. Are they okay in the secondary? You worry about age and injury. Quandre Diggs comes over from Seattle at safety. Amani Hooker, safety. They did trade again, more of a piecemeal thing. They go out and traded and gave a lot of money to L'Jarius Sneed. He was an All-Pro in Kansas City. Is he going to come to Tennessee in this style of defense and be the same kind of player? I think that remains to be seen. So there's a lot of money on this Titans team. Is it going to be as good as they expect? I don't know. Might need some time early on. So I'd look at them going into Chicago and say, I get it. I expect this to be a close game for Chicago to cover the 4.5. I mean, they're obviously going to have to win by they can get two field goals or a touchdown. That might be a little much. I could see this being a 3-point game. Could I see Tennessee winning? Yeah, sure. Sure, I could. I mean, who knows? Again, I have no idea what Caleb Williams is going to do in his first game, or if he's going to have nerves, try to be a superhero, turn the ball over. I don't know. I just think if the Bears play smart and let their defense do the work, that they should be able to win this game. Cincinnati is going to host the New England Patriots. You're probably going to hear this a lot this year where the Patriots go and play. The Patriots are probably going to be the worst team in the league, certainly the worst offense in the league. We'll see when they eventually do turn it over to Drake May, but for now it's Jacoby Brissett. They're walking into a buzzsaw here. I mean, you're talking about a Bengals team that is getting Joe Burrow back, is going to work in some new pieces. You know, obviously the big question is Jamar Chase. Is he going to play? You know, how long is he going to hold in, I guess is the term now, because he's sometimes in practice, sometimes isn't. But look, even if Chase doesn't play, with T. Higgins and with Joe Burrow back and Mike Gesicki, I still think they're a pretty good team. I'm not worried about their losing the offensive coordinator because Zach Taylor is a really good. He basically is the brains behind the offense, and he'll have a lot to say. I think T. Higgins. They have this slot receiver that is going to get introduced to household names this year. I'm not saying he's going to be the next like Victor Cruz or anything like that, but Andre Yasevis, he was a 6th-round pick in 2023. He's going to step into Tyler Boyd's slot role while they continue to work Jermaine Burton in. But Yasevis is a guy who they have expectations for. And Joe Burrow will find you. If you're open, Joe Burrow will find you. And they like what they've seen in this kid, Andre Yasevis. Again, he was a 6th-round pick out of Princeton. Not a lot of Princeton in the NFL at wide receiver, but I would keep my eyes on him. They always have a pretty decent offensive line. You know, they've got Orlando Brown, got Trent Brown. They drafted Amarius Mims. I think that they're actually pound for pound the biggest offensive line now that they drafted Mims and signed Trent Brown. Biggest offensive line by weight in the NFL, even bigger than the Eagles by slightly a little bit. So you know that they should be able to protect Joe Burrow and should be able to run the ball well. Now, their running game is a mix of Zach Moss, who came over from the Colts via Buffalo before that, and Chase Brown. Chase Brown, for those who don't know, for the Eagles fans, is the twin brother of Sidney Brown, Eagle safety. Both went to Illinois. Chase Brown, to me, is the guy that might benefit the most from this huge offensive line and from Joe Burrow coming back and then moving on from Joe Mixon. Chase Brown has explosion. He was a 5th-round pick, but he's got some juice to him. He can catch the ball. And while Zach Moss might be the steady presence, the veteran, probably a little better in pass pro at this point, wouldn't surprise me if Chase Brown very quickly became a player in that offense that was going to see a lot of snaps and make a bigger impact from the running back position. And the bottom line is this, the offense is going to go as far as Joe Burrow is, and I assume Jamar Chase and them will work it out at some point, and they'll be fine. So maybe not week 1, but I still think they have enough to beat the Patriots, who just come in with zero playmaking ability. So all the Bengals have to do is play it smart, be able to move the chains, not make mistakes, and let Joe Burrow be Joe Burrow, and they'll be fine. I mean, we know that the defensive coordinator for the Bengals is fantastic, Lou Anarumo. They never seem to have great names. You know, Trey Hendrickson's a good double-digit pass rusher. They don't have a bunch of guys who are just going to blow you away with stats, but they have a very good secondary. They signed Geno Stone from Baltimore. We talked about that, one of the losses. The Bengals gave up too many explosives last year. That was the one part of their defense that had really fallen off since their team that went to the Super Bowl. So they bring back Von Bell, who already had experience with them. They bring in Geno Stone to play safety. You know, they move Dax Hill from nickel to outside. They've got Mike Hilton, who has been a good nickel corner with the Steelers, and you know they have him. Uh, I think this is year 2 for Hilton there, and Cam Taylor-Britt is a good corner. This is a good secondary, and obviously their linebackers are good too. You know, Logan Wilson we've seen play well, Jermaine Pratt. So they're a team to me that is you say that the sum of their parts is greater than any individual, and they play really good team defense, and they have good back end, and honestly they should be no threat, uh, no issue I should say for the New England Patriots, who you know they're going to try to run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson when they can. They're going to try to get the passing game working with at least at first with Jacoby Brissett, you know, Hunter Henry gives them a guy who can catch a few passes over the middle. They don't have any playmakers. I mean, Pops Douglas from the slot, KJ Osborne, Jalen Polk, second round pick from Washington. He played with Rome Odunze. You know, I think he has the potential to be a pretty good wide receiver. He can stretch the field, but not in this confines of this. Not with this offensive line as beat up as it is. I mean, there's really this is going to be it's going to be an eyesore offense, folks. Let's be honest. The Patriots offense is not going to be pretty. I see a lot of 3rd and longs, and then you bring in Antonio Gibson on 3rd and 8 so he can catch the pass while the quarterback is under duress for 3 or 4 yards, and then they can punt. That's basically what I see from the Patriots offense. And defensively, that used to be their calling card, where they could at least, you know, stop you defensively if they couldn't do much offense. But the defense, they're not, you know, very good. They trade Matthew Judon to the Falcons because they're basically starting over. They have a nice safety in Kyle Duggar, nice corner in Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones. I mean, they're always going to be the Patriots, even with Gerard Mayo now as their head coach, and have, you know, guys in the secondary, but they just don't have the horses up front. You know, obviously they got an injury right now going on with the one of their better players in Christian Barmore. So wish the best for him. Good player, defensive tackle out of Alabama. But he won't be playing. So they just don't have much. There's really not anything to write home about. So the Bengals are favored by, I think, 8.5, and I think that's pretty doable for them. It would surprise me if they didn't win by 8.5. Colts Texans is a great 1 o'clock matchup. You got to be excited about both of these teams. I know a lot of people feel like the Texans are now instantaneous Super Bowl contenders with CJ Stroud. They bring in Joe Mixon. They've got they trade for Stephon Diggs. They have a great trio of receivers. We know Tank Dell's coming back from the injury, so it might take him a little bit, but you know, for now he's out there. So you got Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins. You have guys who can operate at all 3 levels of the field. You have a quarterback who, the biggest thing about CJ Stroud is he has a confidence that you don't see often, especially out of rookie quarterbacks last year, but at a young quarterbacks. He is not afraid to make a dangerous throw, and he's got the arm to do it, and he's got the ability to pick apart a defense prior to the snap to do it. And now you add to him on a precise route runner like Stephon Diggs. Offensive line's a good offensive line. Joe Mixon. I mean, they're already made. You can absolutely see this team contending for a Super Bowl this year, so long as CJ Stroud continues to play the way he did last year, and that for whatever reason his confidence wouldn't be shaken. I can't imagine it would be. So they have all the components, and on defense, you saw immediately the impact that DeMeco Ryans had on that defense. They play violently, they punish you, they hit hard, It's exactly what you thought, D'Amico Ryans. It's not a shock that the 49er defense, especially the run defense, fell off a little bit last year. But here come D'Amico Ryans and his defense out there, and Will Anderson, and now they had Jonathan Greenard do a nice job at the edges. They basically traded him by letting him go to Minnesota and then signing an edge rusher from Minnesota and Daniil Hunter. So with Anderson and Hunter, you have guys that can hurt you from the edges. Derek Barnett came over from the Eagles and played well for them last year. Uh, Good interior guys. Aziz Al-Shahir was one of their linebacker signings in free agency. Stingley is a guy. They actually drafted Stingley higher than Sauce Gardner. I think people forgot about that. When he's not hurt, he's a good player. Good for this defense. So Jalen Petrie is a guy who's, was a safety, but really plays in the box. Will play nickel. They're going to rely on a couple of rookies there in the secondary with Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter, but they're going to be fine. This team will be fine, and that offense will help the defense out because that offense is going to be able to move the ball. So they go into Indianapolis and they play you got to be excited about this Chargers team as long as Anthony Richardson in year 2 stays healthy. He was a big concern for a lot of teams, a lot of fans last year. Is he going to be able to play quarterback? And it seemed like before he got hurt, those concerns got alleviated really quickly. I mean, he was looking like a guy who could be very prolific, very explosive. Obviously, they have a great running game with Jonathan Taylor. Offensive line is good enough, not great, but good enough. When you have a guy like Anthony Richardson to be able to function, Jonathan Taylor, when he's healthy, can move the chains. Wide receivers, Michael Pittman's a good player. We'll see what AD Mitchell does as a rookie. Josh Downs has been banged up, so it looks like AD Mitchell is going to get his shot early on. I like Downs. I thought Downs was a good complementary piece to Pittman last year. Alec Pierce, you'd like to see a little bit more of, but maybe that's where Adonai Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell slipped to the second round, but some thought he was a first round talent, and he has some abilities out of Texas. Him and Xavier Worthy really made it happen out there in Texas. So when you look at their weapons and you say Anthony Richardson, what he can do throwing the ball, running the ball, Jonathan Taylor running the ball, Michael Pittman, very good possession receiver in this league who can work 2 to 3 levels. Adonai Mitchell will come in. We'll see what you get from Alec Pierce. Kylan Granson was getting most of their run on the first team as a tight end. We'll see if there's any rapport there with Richardson and Granson. So I like this team. And let's be real. Shane Steichen is an elite play caller in this league. He showed that with the Eagles. He showed it last year when Gardner Minshew had to take over for Richardson, and yet they were still a legit team. The Indianapolis Colts. They did some good things. They play in a tough division. So last year they finished 9-8. I thought that was pretty good for them. They scored 415. No, they allowed 450 points. They scored 395 points last year, which was the most of any team in the AFC South. All right. With Gardner Minshew starting as many games as he did. That just shows you what they got in a play calling standpoint in Shane Steichen. So defensively, pretty good. Not great, but good. Julian Blackman at safety, we know. We know that they have fast linebackers. Zaire Franklin, good linebacker. EJ Speed, another good linebacker. Up front, it's really all about Kwity Paye and their rookie. They drafted Laiatu Latu. Looks like Latu, who had some medical concerns coming out of college. I saw some preseason highlights of him. He looks like he shot out of a cannon as usual. So if he and Paye stay healthy and can play, that gives him a good 1-2 in the pass rush. Tyquan Lewis also gives him a little juice in the pass rush. It's not a great defense as far as names, but they play good. Kenny Moore, we talked about him being their nickel cornerback. It's a good defense. And again, if Latu and Paye are good edge rushers, this will be a better defense because it's pretty athletic in the middle with the linebackers and pretty athletic in the secondary. They just need to be able to hit the quarterbacks in this league. And if Paye and Latu can do that on a regular basis, this Colts team will be pretty fun to watch. They host the Texans. I don't think they're better than the Texans, but they're the home team. The Texans are 3-point favorites. I'm going to take Houston in this game. Would not shock me if Indianapolis won the game, only because Houston's coming in with so much hype. But, there's the element of surprise right now with Anthony Richardson coming in. And Indianapolis should be able to play with the Texans. And if you're at home and you can play with this team, you can win the game. So I wouldn't touch this game from a betting standpoint. Uh, I like Houston to win the game, but it wouldn't shock me if it went the other way to Indianapolis. The other 1 o'clock games, you got Miami at home to Jacksonville. You know, Miami tends to benefit a lot from September games because it's still hot and humid, but they're playing Jacksonville, so it's not like they're welcoming in the Seahawks or the Bills here or a team that plays in more milder climates. Jacksonville's got a lot to prove. Trevor Lawrence has to stay healthy. Miami's got a lot to prove. You know, they went on the road last year in the playoffs and bowed down the way everybody kind of figured they would bow down in the playoffs. They lost 26-7 to the Chiefs. It was that epically cold game in Kansas City, and they didn't score. But we know that the Dolphins can score. We know they score in September, especially. You know, they dropped a 70 burger last year on the Broncos. Tua is healthy. They've got, I know Tyreek Hill and Waddle were banged up a little bit in camp, but apparently they're healthy now. Devin Achane, he's healthy right now, so he should be. This will be an interesting running game. I mean, with Achane, Mostert, and Jalen Wright, kid they drafted in the 4th round, they got some guys who can run the ball, and that's always been. Everybody thinks of Miami as this team that throws the ball a million times to Tyreek Hill and Waddle, but they run the ball. That is their bread and butter. That outside stretch run, zone run from Mike McDaniel, is their bread and butter. They bring in Jonnu Smith. I mean, they shouldn't have trouble scoring points, even with Jacksonville's new defensive coordinator. We'll get into in a second. As long as Waddle and Tyreek Hill are healthy, and Achane's healthy, and Mostert's healthy, week one's great for the Dolphins because that's when they're at their healthiest. And of course, on defense they get their edge rushers. You know, they have Calais Campbell there. They bring back Emmanuel Ogba. Chop Robinson they draft. We'll see if Chop can make an impact. He'll probably be situational to start off with. He's not the biggest guy in the world. You know, they lost Van Ginkel, who signed a big contract with the Vikings, so they got to figure out a way to replace him. They bring in Poyer from Buffalo. We'll see if he at this age he can still play and help out that secondary. Javon Holland's always been a nice safety. Jalen Ramsey is a good corner who was not healthy at this time last year. Kendall Fuller. So the good guys in the secondary. I just don't know if they have enough right now as far as rushing the passer. But the bottom line is Miami's a tough team to play in September, especially if you've got moving parts on defense or if you have a new defensive coordinator like Jacksonville has. You've got to be disciplined. You got to be patient. You can't fall for all the eye candy in the Miami offense. And I just think it's a difficult first game for Jacksonville's defense. So Miami 3.5 point favorite. I like Miami in this game. They're all healthy, and that's the big thing. Miami's a tough team to beat in September when they're fully healthy, especially on offense. All right, we go to New Orleans. New Orleans Saints are at home to take on Carolina Panthers, and 4 point favorites that the Saints are at home, 4.5 in some areas. Look, this is the reality of this game is it's two eyesore offenses going at it. Now, both of them have new offensive coordinators. Carolina is a little interesting because they bring in Dave Canales as their head coach. He did a great job as the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator last year, and he comes in trying to make something of this Panthers offense that, doesn't have a ton of talent, but has Bryce Young, and they're hoping that he can develop Bryce Young Dave Canales, the way he did last year for the Bucks. Carolina's offensive line is not great. I know that they're a little bit more excited about this year. They brought Robert Hunt in to play right guard. Ike Ekwonu, they're hoping he bounces back at left tackle. Taylor Moton at right tackle, where he belongs. He has played well at parts, so maybe with a little bit improved play on the offensive line and with the playmakers they brought in. They trade, obviously, for Deontay Johnson. They draft Xavier Legette in the 1st round. They've got Adam Thielen there. Still have Jonathan Mingo. Chuba Hubbard. They're really waiting, the Panthers are, for one of the running back that they drafted Jonathan Brooks to come off NFI. They have high expectations for him, but it's going to have to be an offense that works its way over the course of a season, has to find itself. I don't know if Bryce Young is going to go from being a disappointing rookie to all of a sudden having some breakout second year. Obviously the defense, they signed Jadeveon Clowney, but they lost Brian Burns, who went to the Giants. They traded him to the Giants. Yeah, their secondary is okay. You got J.C. Horn, who, if he can stay healthy, is a pretty good corner. Uh, Derek Brown's a nice defensive tackle, but I don't see the Carolina Panthers being a very good team this year. I don't see the Saints being great either, but I tell you this about the Saints. They hire a new offensive coordinator, which they needed. They really needed a new set of eyes for that offense. I don't know what you're going to get from that with Derek Carr, if you're going to make him the quarterback who was able to win 12 games once with the Raiders, or anything that's more above average or than what he already is. But they did bring in Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. And if you know about the Kubiak name, you associate that with Gary Kubiak and Kubiak's association with Shanahan. Clint came over from San Francisco, where he's with Kyle Shanahan. So he's going to run a lot of the same concepts, and that helps any offense. And I think that that'll help a guy like Chris Olave, who's clearly one of the better receivers in the NFL. He hasn't had an amazing years. He's had good years, 2 good years. Probably has the potential to be a lot better, but he needs more layup routes, and that's what the Shanahan offense gives you. It gives you an opportunity to get those slants, get those digs, get the ball in your hand more on what we call the layup routes, play action, than whatever they were doing the last 2 years. And Rashid Shaheed's a good deep threat. We'll see if he can become a little bit more involved in the offense. Tight ends, you still got Taysom Hill there. You still have Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau. The running back still Alvin Kamara, maybe Kamara and Jamal Williams benefit from the new offensive scheme that Clint Kubiak's going to bring in. But I can't see this Saints offense going from just eyesore to all of a sudden, explosive because they bring in Clint Kubiak. I think he can help. I think you might see you'll see some differences schematically in how they run their offense, but you're asking them, can they compete in the NFC South? Can they beat a team like the Panthers? Yes. I think they're good enough to beat the Panthers week 1. They still have some pretty good pieces on defense, by the way. Cam Jordan, they've got Demario Davis, they signed Willie Gay, Teron Matthews there, Marshawn Lattimore's there. They're good. They're good enough in the front seven, but the offense to me, they drafted Fuaga from Oregon State to be their left tackle. They've had problems at left tackle for a while now, so hopefully Fuaga can hold it down. Everywhere else on the line, okay. Sometimes less than okay. So I don't, that's why the Kubiak system helps there, because it can compensate for not having a great offensive line, but not a lot of great playmakers on offense, and a good enough defense where they can beat teams like the Panthers. But how much better can they be than the Falcons? That's their question. Can they beat the Falcons? Can they beat the Buccaneers? So that'll be the question for this team. I like their defense. I think it's good. The offense has the potential to be better than it has been, but I don't know if this team can be anything more than 8 or 9 wins. We'll see as it goes forward, but they should be able to handle Carolina. If they don't, then A, that New Orleans is going to struggle, and B, then that Dave Canales and what he's bringing to Carolina as a head coach, and as someone who's going to have their fingerprints on offense. If Carolina wins this game, then maybe you start to think differently about the Dave Canales era. I mean, I'm not going to make too much on any week 1 game, but I don't think we expect Carolina to win this, and New Orleans should win on talent alone. Big game, big game here. 1:00, New York. The Giants are hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is actually a favorite in this game, which just goes to show you how bad the Giants have been and how little the expectations are of the Giants. And everybody thinks they'll be picking in the top 5 and getting themselves a quarterback next year, and they might be. And they really might be. I look at this game and I think the Giants have to win this game, honestly. I mean, Minnesota has Sam Darnold at quarterback. Of course, they have Justin Jefferson, and of course, they've got Jordan Addison, and the Vikings have a decent team, but they're reeling from losing their quarterback of the future, JJ McKenna, for the year. They have to play Sam Darnold the entire year. I'm sorry, JJ McCarthy. They have to play Sam Darnold the entire year. There's just, to me, when Sam Darnold's your quarterback, there's a ceiling to how good your offense is going to be. They're going to New York. The Giants have good pieces in their pass rush. They've got Brian Burns now. They've got Dexter Lawrence. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. We'll see what they can get out of Ojulari, who was banged up last year. They have their secondary is not great. You saw that they just brought back Adoree Jackson because that's how desperate they were for some good corner help. He's probably going to start for him. But they're good at the linebacker level with Okiriki there, Bobby Okiriki. And yeah, they'll struggle in the secondary, and they're going to give up yards to Addison. They're going to give up yards to Justin Jefferson, but they should be able to get some shots on Sam Darnold. He can hold the ball for a while. They should be able to force some turnovers if they can get a pass rush on Sam Darnold. We're talking about Sam Darnold here in a new system. So, yes, I like Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings coach. I think he's good offensive play caller. But if I'm the Giants and I'm trying not to have my season tank early like last season and a couple of years ago, you got to beat the Vikings. I'm fascinated to see what Malik Neighbors does. I don't think Daniel Jones is as bad as this preseason made him look out to be. I don't think he's great, but we'll see. I got a feeling the Giants are going to win this game. I do. I know Minnesota's the favorite. I like the Giants coaching staff. They just got to kind of calm down a little bit. Brian Dable, Mike Kafka. I'm really high on their defensive coordinator. They bring in Shane Broden, who I thought did a good job with the Titans. I think not having Wink Martindale and the blitz happy system is actually going to be good for this defense. Puts a little less pressure on the corners, Deontay Banks, Adoree Jackson, the safeties to hold up in man-to-man coverage. As long as you got a good front four rush, which they should have, that style of defense is good and can work. And I just think they're going to force Darnold into some bad plays. It's going to be a close game, I think. I think the Giants are going to come out of this one with a win. We'll see, though. If not, then it'll be the same old Giants, and then maybe you'll feel a little differently about Minnesota in the Sam Darnold era. But I just, the Vikings have some good components. I just wonder how good they are overall. They did sign Jonathan Grenard from the Texans, a good pass rusher, but they lost Danielle Hunter, who was one of their best. I look at their linebackers. They signed Van Ginkel. It's a good signing. He had a good year in Miami, but is he different when he's not in a Vic Fangio system? We'll see. I mean, now he's with Brian Flores, who just basically likes to blitz rolling out of bed. So, I mean, Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin are corners, and a defense likes to blitz a whole lot. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Harrison Smith is still there at safety. I just don't know how good I think the Vikings are going to be defensively. And if Malik Neighbors brings some juice to this Giants offense, which you expect he's going to get about 15 targets, then I could see the Giants hanging in there and winning this game. All right, the 4:00 games, you have the Chargers at home welcoming the Raiders. I don't have very big expectations for the Raiders. We'll see. Gardner Minshew is going to start for them. Aiden O'Connell looking over the shoulder. I can't say that this is just like the Giants, where you expect the Raiders will be probably picking in the top 5 next year and hoping to land on a franchise quarterback. They have some interesting pieces. The Raiders do. Brock Bowers will be unleashed. We'll see what he can do. They obviously still have Devontae Adams, Trey Tucker, decent in the slot. The Zamir White's going to be a running back for them. But again, you've got Gardner Minshew there as your quarterback. Defensively, the Raiders have some decent pieces, but I wouldn't quite, write home about them and think that, just because Antonio Pierce is the head coach, that they are going to be incredible. I know he did a nice job stepping in last year. I know they obviously have Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, so they've got some good pass rushers. They spend a boatload of money on Christian Wilkins, a very good defensive tackle who's with the Dolphins. So they're clearly trying to load up front and make up for what they're lacking on the back end. And they are really lacking, the Raiders are, in the back end of their defense. So they're hoping that the front end can pick up the pieces there. The Chargers, I think, will surprise some people as long as Justin Herbert stays healthy. Obviously, this is the start of the Jim Harbaugh era. Um, Herbert was dealing with a foot injury, a plantar fascia injury, but he came back toward the end of camp, looked pretty good. I like what they've done with their offensive line. Obviously, they drafted Joe Alt. You know that with Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator and Harbaugh as their head coach, they're going to want to play ground and pound. They're going to be violent. They're going to want to run the ball. That's what he did, run and open up a play action passing game. That's what Harbaugh and Greg Roman did in San Francisco when they were there together. You got Rashawn Slater at left tackle. You got Zion Johnson left guard. You got Joe Alt at right tackle. So you see, their GM said, well, we consider our offensive line a weapon. All right. So, well, it's not surprised their GM, Joe Hortiz, came from Baltimore. So he understands about building in the trenches. The thing you worry about is playmakers. All right. Lad McConkey, Josh Palmer, DJ Chark. I think McConkey can actually go and step in right away, start, probably get 8 to 10 targets a game. I mean, he's a great route runner. And he's with a quarterback who can extend the plays, Justin Herbert, by navigating the pocket, by using it as athleticism. He has the right type of offensive coordinator who's going to run the ball a decent amount and set up some good play action to go deep to Palmer or get McConkey involved in the intermediary level. We'll see if they can get anything out of Quentin Johnson. I doubt it. We'll see. Um, I thought he was overdrafted when they picked him in the first round 2 years ago. But he is still on the team. We'll see what he's got. But they're basically going to have to run the ball. Now, they've got 4 different running backs, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and keep your eye on the rookie, 6th-round pick, Kamani Vidal. Okay, he could wind up, he was from Troy, by the end of the year being their lead ball carrier, especially given the injury history of J.K. Dobbins. And Gus Edwards is a nice running back, but I think Vidal will give him a little more juice. But this will be a team that, obviously has a running back committee. They'll try to hit the tight ends a little bit, as they always do in a Greg Roman offense. They've got Will Dissly. They got Hayden Hurst. I mean, these guys aren't going to be Vernon Davis, but they're going to be able to move the chains at times. And they're just going to have to be a methodical, deliberate offense, but they have the right type of pieces to be able to do that against certain teams. Defensively, they do bring back Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. They've got, I'd say, past that, I don't know if they're as deep as you'd want them to be on the interior. So that could be an issue for them. Stopping the run could be an issue. Denzel Perryman's been around for a while. He's one of their linebackers. Dion Henley had a decent job. They drafted Junior Colson, who played at Michigan, played for Harbaugh. So it wouldn't surprise me if Colson gone on the field. But, they traded late for Elijah Molden, who's kind of a safety nickel. I think the key for this staff here, with Jesse Minter now coming from Michigan to this defense here in LA, is can they unlock Derwin James? Can they get him back to being an all-pro level safety? They're taking a gamble on Christian Fulton being a good corner. He's had some ups and downs in this league. Asante Samuel Jr. There's some decent players here, but I do not think that they will be a lockdown defense by any stretch of the means. But they certainly should have enough to hold off the Raiders. It'll be a good game, LA versus Vegas. It should be. But Chargers are 3-point favorites at home. I'd be surprised if they didn't win that game. I think they can win by a touchdown or more. And we'll see how the Harbaugh era starts off with the Chargers. The other 4:05 game, you've got Seattle hosting Denver in Seattle. Interesting teams. Seattle, I'm telling you, they're 6-point favorites. And Seattle is a team that I think can surprise some people. They went 9-8 last year. They're almost never bad. They're always a decent team. Now they've got Mike McDonald, who did such a great job with Baltimore's defense, and he comes over and he's going to run the program. And, does he have the same level of talent as he had in Baltimore? No, but it's not a bare cupboard. Jaron Reed, Jonathan Hankins, Leonard Williams up front, Draymond Jones. Remember this guy, Boye Mafe, this guy, McDonald did an excellent job with sim pressures and confusing quarterbacks, deception. So he may not need, a guy who's going to have 16 sacks. He's probably going to rely on the greater of the whole here and use guys like Leonard Williams and Boye Mafe and try to make it work. They drafted Byron Murphy in the first round. He's a guy who I think can make a pretty good impact. I'm not. This isn't a bad front seven. At the linebacker level, they're starting over a little bit. No more Bobby Wagner there. No more Jordan Brooks. So they're starting over. And on the back end, okay, Devin Witherspoon. We'll see. He'll probably play some outside and nickel. Uh, Other than that, we'll see if Tariq Woolen can continue to play at a high level. Julian Love at safety. It's not the greatest secondary in the world, but Witherspoon's a player, and this guy, this defense, this coach McDonald has done a lot. I think he can take this defense and make it pretty good and pretty respectable fairly quickly. And on the other side, there's a lot of excitement about Ryan Grubb, their new offensive coordinator. This is a guy who came over from the University of Washington. Now, in case you were living in a cave and didn't watch Washington's offense with Michael Penix and Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan, it is a downfield offense. It is a vertical strike offense. And with the personnel that Ryan Grubb has here with the Seahawks, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, three pretty good receivers right there. I think you'll see a huge step up this year from Jackson Smith and Jigba. Eagles fans remember what he was able to do in that fourth quarter against them last year. And they don't have a very good offensive line. That's going to be rough. So they will have to maintain an identity of trying to run the ball with Kenneth Walker. But if when Geno is protected, he's a pretty decent quarterback, accurate quarterback, and can make most of the throws that you need to make to win NFL games. He's got Metcalf. He has Smith and Jigba. He has Lockett. Decent tight end in Noah Fant, who never really has lived up to his billing, but maybe in this offense with Ryan Grubb orchestrating it, you see a little bit more. They just have to overcome their offensive line. It's not a great offensive line. But I do think Seattle can surprise some people, and they're facing a team in Denver that has basically pushed the entire reset button. Now, the Broncos will be an interesting follow, obviously, with their new quarterback, Bo Nix, and his relationship and pairing with Sean Payton. That'll be a storyline, and he steps in, and look, he's got Javonte Williams, who's now 2 years removed from that major injury at running back. Cortland Sutton, good possession receiver in this league. I like the pickup of Josh Reynolds from Detroit. Marvin Mims has yet to really show you what he was at Oklahoma, but perhaps with this offense and this quarterback, he'll be able to do it. The offensive line's okay. It's a big loss losing their center, Cushenberry, who went to Tennessee. Garrett Bowles is a nice left tackle. Minerns, their right guard out of Wisconsin Whitewater. Everybody calls him the Belly from the Senior Bowl. He got a nice extension at right guard. Mike McGlinchey, right tackle. He's okay. But honestly, this is going to be one of those offenses that's very deliberate, moves the ball, with a run game, moves the ball through the air. It's not going to be a deep strike offense. It's going to be in the middle of the field. Cortland Sutton's probably going to get 150 targets this year because he's far and away above, anybody else on that offense as far as a pass catcher. Reynolds is solid. Mims Jr. can be better. Troy Franklin, a kid they drafted in the fourth round, not ready yet, but maybe he gets involved more as the season goes on. But this offense is basically going to be pound it with Javonte Williams, throw the ball to Cortland Sutton, and hope that Bo Nix can limit his mistakes and that his experience from college, puts him on the faster track for success. Defensively, they just signed Pat Surtain to a long-term deal. Great cornerback. Not a whole lot else on that defense. I mean, I like Baron Browning as a pass rushing linebacker. I like John Franklin Myers, came over from the Jets. Zach Allen's a good defensive end. This is a team, Nick Bonito can do something. This is a team that has some guys that can get to the quarterback if you scheme it up well. And obviously Vance Joseph is known for doing that as a defensive coordinator. Don't have a ton of guys who just, you look at him and say, that guy can just beat anybody one-on-one, man-to-man. They have to scheme up their pressures. But they've got some good athletes up front to be able to do it. They just have to go ahead and do it there. Jonah Ellis, third-round pick. He'll get involved as the season goes on, too, as an outside linebacker. I think that they'll be able, at times, to cause some problems for quarterbacks. But in general, I just don't think that they are there defensively to be able to win a whole lot of games, especially if the offense is not prolific, and I'm not expecting the offense to be prolific. So the Seahawks come in, they're 5.5 point favorite. I think that's fair. I think the Seahawks will win this game. I think they'll start off the Mike McDonald era pretty well. It's going to be tough for Bo Nix to, the first defensive coordinator he sees as one of the best defensive play callers in the league with McDonald there. So I would expect that the Seahawks will take control of that game, and I think 6 points is fair, especially with the game being in Seattle. They'll win that game. The last of the 4 o'clock games, you got the Cleveland Browns hosting the Dallas Cowboys in Cleveland. Cleveland, interestingly, is a favorite in this game. A lot of people down on the Cowboys because they didn't really make that many moves because of their running back issue. Listen, I don't know what Cleveland has proven. I get it. They were a good team last year. They won 11 games. They had Flacco come in and give them some magic down the stretch. But I don't know what the Browns have proven more than the Cowboys that they would be favorites for any other reason than being at home. And, when you're a 2.5 point favorite at home, you're really not a favorite on a neutral field. So I think the Cowboys can win this game. Obviously, the Browns will be without Chubb for a while as he makes his way back. Jerome Ford will be their running back. Deshaun Watson is, to me, the biggest mystery in the NFL. He has not played like a good quarterback in quite a while. He's dealt with injuries. He was banged up a little bit in camp. If he's healthy, and with Kevin Stefanski calling the plays now, maybe you see a difference in their offense. I mean, they clearly have some decent weapons. Amari Cooper, David Njoku is a very good tight end. You're hoping, if you're the Browns, that Jerry Jeudy comes over and gives you that second or third receiver ability. I heard Jamari Thrash had a really good camp for them. He was their 5th-round pick out of Louisville at wide receiver. Elijah Moore really hasn't done much. The Browns still have a decent offensive line. So, yeah, they should be able to move the ball. Do I think they can move the ball against the Dallas's defense? We'll see. I do think the switch for Dallas from coordinators, losing Dan Quinn and going to Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer's not going to blitz nearly as much. He's not going to play nearly as much man-to-man. I think that's going to help Dallas's defense out a little bit. I think it's going to bring a little bit more balance to Dallas's defense. So I don't think that the Browns are going to have an easy time moving the ball against the Cowboys defense, even though there are a couple of players on the Cowboys that are banged up. Defensively, the Browns are very good. So I guess Dallas will also have their issue. Obviously, they'll have to contend with Garrett Miles, going up probably against their rookie left tackle. They'll have to contend with, Denzel Ward, who's a good cornerback. That's the thing about week one. Everybody's usually healthy. Greg Newsome, cornerback. Devin Bush is there trying to revive his career as a linebacker. Zadarius Smith is a good pass rusher. I mean, this is a good defense. It's a very good defense that the Browns have. So I understand why they're a little bit of a favorite at home. But, I mean, Dallas's offense, I get it. They got, they're the bottom of the barrel at running back with Ezekiel Elliott and bringing in Dalvin Cook. But it's really never been about the running back for them, more recently. It's more been about Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and he's signed now, and the tight ends that they got. Ferguson's a good tight end. We'll see if Schoonemaker takes a jump up this year. We'll see if Jalen Tolbert gives a little bit more to the offense now. I'm not worried about the offensive line with 2 new starters, Cooper Beebe at center and Tyler Guyton, because they're high picks. And face it, the Dallas Cowboys have a very good record of drafting and developing offensive linemen. They got Zach Martin there at right guard, and maybe their best example recently is their left guard, Tyler Smith, 1st-round pick. A lot of question marks about him, played well. So you got Guyton, Smith, Beebe, Martin, Terrence Steele. Listen, all Dak needs is a little bit of time, and he'll find Brandon Cooks. He'll find CeeDee Lamb, of course, probably 10 to 12 times a game. He'll find Ferguson. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys on this to, I guess, pull off the upset. I think they're going to go into Cleveland. I think they'll win the game. I just don't know what Deshaun Watson is going to show up and what that offense is going to look like. I feel like I am more comfortable knowing what Dallas is going to bring, both offensively and defensively. Tampa Bay at home to face Washington Commanders. What an interesting game this is. Of course, Tampa Bay coming off their playoff year. We talked about Dave Canales was their offensive coordinator and really unlocked their offense as best they could last year with Baker Mayfield. Now, it still should be noted that the Buccaneers last year won the division, but they scored well, I'm going to take the Panthers out of the equation. Obviously, the Panthers scored the fewest points, but the Saints scored more points than them. So they scored the second fewest points, won the division. Um, they only allowed, I believe, they allowed the fewest points. So this is more about Tampa Bay being a very good defensive team and Todd Bowles than it was about the offense. The offense was just unlocked in a way that it hadn't been with Baker Mayfield offenses before. So you credit Dave Canalison for doing that. Now they have yet another new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who used to be with the Rams in the McVay. He also used to be at the University of Kentucky. So he's kind of been around. He's done different things. The challenge for him is, can he get Baker Mayfield to continue to play can he A, get him to play as well as he played last year, and B, can he get him to take a step up a little bit? And that to me is a big question mark. At least you can say that Baker Mayfield has his set of weapons. He's got Mike Evans. He's got Chris Godwin, another University of Washington receiver, a rookie drafted in the 3rd round, Jalen McMillan. Looks like Godwin's going to go back to the slot where he's more productive. Mike Evans has been a 1,000-yard receiver every single year that he's been in the league. First ballot Hall of Famer. They drafted the kid from Duke, Cody Graham Barton, to play center. So you imagine that's a little upgrade on the interior offensive line. Wirfs still a good left tackle. Everybody else on the line is okay, not great. So again, can they build a short passing game around Godwin, around Evans, around K. Dotton? Yeah. Obviously Rachaad White catches a lot of balls. I'm not a huge Rachaad White fan. I don't think he's a very efficient runner. He can catch the ball. And from a fantasy perspective, yeah, that's great. They drafted a kid, Bucky Irving, in the 4th round out of Oregon. Got some juice to him. It wouldn't surprise me if things don't start off great for Rachaad White, if Irving got some opportunities to take over there. But this offense needs to take a little bit of a step up for them to be able to beat the Falcons and win the division again. And, I'm just not sure that there's enough there if Baker Mayfield himself doesn't take another step up. Defensively, they're good. Vita Vea, obviously, Kalijah Cansey. I love that interior. They got Tryon. They got guys who can get to the quarterback, and a defensive coordinator / head coach in Todd Bowles who knows how to get guys at the quarterback. And you saw last year, Yaya Diaby, a 3rd round pick as a rookie, come in, do some really good things. So I am of the mindset, Antoine Winfield Jr., one of the best safeties in the league, drafted a good safety out of Georgia, Tyke Smith. I think this defense is going to be very, very difficult. And it's tough that Washington has to come in with Jaden Daniels and all these expectations and go into Tampa Bay, where I'm sure it's going to be hot and humid and disgusting and swampy, and try to figure out what they're doing offensively against Todd Bowles and that defense. So Tampa Bay is a 3.5-point favorite. I like Tampa Bay in that game. I think Jaden Daniels will probably be asked to do a little bit too much. He does have some decent weapons. They brought in Austin Eckler to be a split time running back, I guess, a 3rd down running back or a 2nd and long running back, along with Brian Robinson. Terry McLaurin's there. We know they got rid of Jahan Dotson. So they have Diami Brown. Again, McLaurin is a pretty reliable receiver. He's going to give you plays. So they're going to get some plays out of that. But it just feels like in this first game against that kind of defense that's going to come after them, that you might see Jaden Daniels running around and running for his life and trying to make plays. And can he get the ball to Zacchaeus or Luke McCaffrey or Diami Brown off script? Can he get the ball to McLaurin off script a little bit? He's going to probably have to. So I look forward to what Washington does over the course of the season, because I think they nailed it with the quarterback. I think they're going to be all right. And I think they're going to be an improved team. Cliff Kingsbury's there. Dan Quinn's there. It's a veteran coaching staff. So I like it. But right now, they're trying to work in a new left tackle, rookie, Brandon Coleman from TCU, guy who is, a rookie. I think he has, the Eagles liked him. He was probably going to be a good player sometime down the road, but is he going to be able to handle all the things being thrown at him in week 1 by Todd Bowles? That's a big question mark. So obviously they brought in Tyler Biadasz from Dallas. He's a good center. He can help stabilize things. But I do, and Sam Cosmi, they just gave an extension to. So a couple of spots on the line, center, right guard, you feel comfortable about. You're uncomfortable about the about the edges. Andrew Wiley at right tackle, who's just okay, and Brandon Coleman, who will probably be a good player, but is basically a rookie being thrown into the fire here against a defense that's just going to come after him and come after him. So while I like Washington and I'm curious to see how they develop throughout the year, to me it's a bad first matchup. Bucks 3.5 point favorites. I like Tampa in this matchup to win the game. The last game on Sunday is the night game, prime time, 8:20 on NBC. It is the Detroit Lions hosting the Los Angeles Rams. If you've listened to me on Inside the Birds, you know two things were read insidethebirds.com. You know two things I think about this matchup. One, I feel like the Lions have the best 53-man roster in the NFC, and I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. So they start off the season at home. But I also have said I think the Rams could be a much better team than people give them credit for if they stay healthy. Stafford's got to be healthy. Nakua and Cooper Kupp have to be healthy. They've had some issues already on the offensive line throughout camp. I was excited for their offensive line, especially with it looked like they were going to move Steve Avila to center, and they had signed a guy from the Lions, Jonah Jackson, to play guard. And it looks like maybe they might not do that now. Maybe that Avila will stay at left guard and Jackson will play center. Jackson's been beat up throughout his career at times. I know they've got injuries. Havenstein and Noteboom. They're not great at tackle, but again, I look at this coaching staff. They always seem to get the most. They know exactly how to adjust. When everybody thinks they got Sean McVay in a box, he figures it out. Like, for example, last year, he became far more of an inside zone runner, far more duo than the outside stretch zones that the McVay/Shanahan trees are known for. But I worry about their running back staying healthy. Kyren Williams had a great year last year. He was a big time fade for me in fantasy. He's like 200 pounds on a good day, 5'9", and they're now going to have him returning punts. I don't know if he can handle all that workload that he got last year. They drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd round, and he is perfect inside zone type runner. So I imagine that there'll be some opportunities for Blake Corum to prove himself in this offense, especially if Kyren Williams doesn't stay healthy. But to me, you've got Matthew Stafford. You have two of the best receivers in the league in Nakua and Kupp. So they should be able to go toe-to-toe with a lot of teams offensively. Now, the question is, will they be able to do it against Detroit, who is a pretty stacked team? I like the Lions a lot. I like their coaching staff. I think the fact that they retained both of their coordinators again, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, coming off their banner season last year, just is exactly what they needed to get over the hump. Jared Goff is at a stage of his career where you can tell he is in sync with his offensive coordinator and with his offensive personnel. He's not making nearly as many mistakes. Is he still jittery in the pocket? Yeah, some quarterbacks are. So is Matthew Stafford at times. But you saw the rapport he's got with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I expect Jameson Williams to become a bigger part of this offense here in year 3 for him. He's finally that number 2 now. They don't have Josh Reynolds anymore. And of course, you saw how good Sam Laporta was. Their offensive line's great. Might be the best offensive line in the league. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs at running back. I mean, that's just, thunder and lightning right there. They can attack you from so many different ways. They're poised. They're comfortable. Just a good offense. And I expect them to be a pretty prolific offense. And that's going to be a problem for a Rams defense that no longer has Aaron Donald. Now, I'm excited for the Rams' potential at the edge rushers. They drafted 2 guys from Florida State, Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk, who I think will be pretty good in the long run. And this may be a situation where their defense is not so Aaron Donald centric, but it's a little bit more of a balanced defense. You got, Byron Young, who came on as a pass rusher as a rookie last year, a 3rd round pick. So they brought in Neville Gallimore to give them a little depth up front. So, I mean, it kind of just depends on how good Verse and Fisk are going to be as rookies, 1st and 2nd round picks right there. They did bring in Cameron Curl, play safety. Everybody who listens to Inside the Birds knows how much we like Cameron Curl. Not a huge turnover producer, but a stabilizer in the secondary. Darius Williams has been around at corner. John Johnson's been around. Tre'Davious White they're gambling on. Maybe that works out for him if he stays healthy. He hasn't stayed very healthy very often throughout his career, but you never know. So it could be a good to decent Rams defense, depending on how the young kids play. But I just feel like you're walking into a buzzsaw here a little bit, going to play Detroit in Detroit. There's just so much buzz around the Lions. The Lions are 3.5 point favorites. I think that's fair because I do think the Rams are a good team and the Rams have good players too. But I would expect that the Lions will win this game. To me, they're a well-oiled machine and they're going to hit the ground running. And if they lose, I won't put much. I wouldn't say, oh man, the Lions aren't what we thought they are. I would say, all right, the Rams had a good first week, and again, they've got weapons too, and maybe some of the young kids on defense play better than you think. But I like the Lions prospects this year. I do think they're going to go to the Super Bowl, and I would pick them in this game with the 3.5. That brings us to the final game, Monday night game, New York Jets at San Francisco 49ers. What a game this is as Aaron Rodgers goes back to the Bay Area to play the 49ers, assuming Aaron Rodgers makes it through the game and stays healthy. I haven't had an opportunity much to talk about this on Inside the Birds, so I'll let you know. I'm worried about the 49ers and how they start this season. They are ripe to have the Super Bowl hangover, right? I mean, they lose the Super Bowl. They've had nothing but off-season strife this year. I mean, Brandon Ayuk saga that finally ended, the Trent Williams saga that finally ended. They did lose. They got rid of their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, and decided to go in-house or bring a guy back to replace him. They lost Eric Armstead. We talked about him going to I think it was Jacksonville. I just feel like they're the type of team that had so much. I don't put a whole lot into vibes, but it just felt like they had not a very good offseason. And then, McCaffrey was banged up in camp a little bit. So we'll see what happens here. The same thing with the 49ers. Their offensive line isn't great, but they compensate because they have so many weapons and they have an elite play caller. And I guess it looks like, if Ayuk plays and Debo and George Kittle, then they have their full set of weapons and they can be good. They're not the same defensively. They do have Hargrave still. They do have Bosa. They lost Armstead, though. They brought in Leonard Floyd and Gross Matos to be, edge rushers. They don't listen. Chase Young didn't really work out for them when they traded him for him last year. Forgot to mention him joining the Saints and being a part of their defense. But, Chase was still giving you 7.5 to 8 sacks a year. I don't know what you're going to get opposite Nick Bosa here with this Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross Matos combination. I just don't think up front there is, they don't have Javon Kinlaw. He wasn't a first round type player like they wanted him to be, but I just don't see the depth here on the defensive line that they had a year and 2 years ago. Now you got Fred Warner. That's great. But, Dre Greenlaw is coming back from an injury, so he won't be on the field to start off. The guy got hurt in the Super Bowl. You will have the safety Hufanga back, the Pro Bowl safety, but again, he's coming off an injury. Ward at cornerback, Isaac Yiadom at cornerback. It's good. Ward's a good player. Yiadom's okay. Lenore's a good nickel. I just don't think that this defense is as deep and as tenacious as we've seen it in past years, which means the offense is going to have to continue to be great, which it probably will. But now you're talking about facing a Jets team that comes in with all sorts of, talent everywhere. Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, healthy. Obviously their defense last year was very good. Did they lose Bryce Hall? Yeah. Did they expect Will McDonald to step in there aside Jermaine Johnson and be good? And obviously they thought that they would have Hassan Reddick with them. He is not with them at the moment. We'll see what happens with that saga. But make no mistake, this is still a really good defense. I mean, you've got Jermaine Johnson. This is Javon Kinlaw went from the 49ers, and maybe he does better with the Jets. I doubt it, but, he's going to be there. He'll be a part of their team. They obviously have Quinnen Williams, who's a, Pro Bowl, all-pro level interior lineman. Again, Will McDonald, I think, will take a big step here in year 2. Their linebackers are sound. They've got Sauce Gardner, a really good corner. They just give a contract extension to Michael Carter, their nickel, DJ Reed. I mean, this is a really, really good defense from top to bottom. And they're a disciplined defense. And it's not like Robert Saleh, who came over from San Francisco a couple of years ago, doesn't know what the 49ers are going to do. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is going to be hyped up to prove everybody that he can still play, that he's not a bad teammate, that he's not crazy, all the things that are being said about him. The 49ers are 4.5-point favorites. I like the Jets to win this game. I really do. I like them to go on the road and win this game. I just think that right now the Niners I think they're going to need a couple of weeks. I think they're going to suffer through the Super Bowl hangover. I think they got to get everybody healthy, everybody on the same page, everybody back to being conditioned. We'll see. Brock Purdy's going to have to take a little bit of a step up again this year, which he had a phenomenal year last year, and he is a good quarterback for the system. He's perfect for the system, actually. I just think that right now the Jets come in and they're just bursting at the seams to prove to everybody how great they are. And what better way to do that than on the Monday night stage against the defending NFC championships? I don't think they're going to run away with this game. They're going to be close, but I think they're a better team. The Jets could be a Super Bowl team. Let's be honest. They have a good enough roster to make the Super Bowl. Can they beat the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't know. And obviously time will tell for that, but they have enough to win the division. They have enough to go toe-to-toe with anybody, and I think they're catching San Francisco at the right time. So do I think they'll win the game outright? Yeah, I do. That would cover the spread. Could the Niners win? Sure. Absolutely. Could they cover the spread? Sure. Absolutely. But I just like the Jets in this game. All right, so now I'm going to pick the 3 games that I like from a betting angle. We'll start off with the Bengals giving the Patriots 8.5. I like the Bengals to win this game and cover. I just think they're a superior team. As I mentioned, I think it's going to be difficult for the Patriots this year to keep up with opponents, especially opponents that can put a lot of points on the scoreboard, like I believe the Bengals will be able to do with a healthy Joe Burrow. So I like the Bengals giving 8.5 to the New England Patriots in that one. My second game, I'm going to choose. I kind of wrestled with this one, but I am going to go with the Miami Dolphins. They are, again, giving 3.5 to Jacksonville. It's not that I'm down that much on Jacksonville. I just think it's a tough road game for the Jags to start off with an entirely new defensive coordinator, some new defensive personnel. And let's face it, when Miami is healthy, they are a very, very explosive offense. They are at home. They have expectations this year. So Miami giving 3.5 to Jacksonville. I do believe they'll win and cover that. And for my third game, I'm going to go a little outside the box. You may have heard me leaning this way anyway. I did say I thought this team was going to win, even though they are getting points. And that is the New York Giants. I'm going to take the Giants at home, giving 1.5 points to the Minnesota Vikings. This one could wind up biting me in the rear end, but I'm just not that impressed with the Vikings. And not that I think the Giants are a juggernaut, but I have a feeling that they're going to start off the Malik Neighbors era with a bang, and it'll be fun. Justin Jefferson and Malik Neighbors on the field opposing each other. I just think the Giants will be able to squeeze this one out, and they're getting 1.5 anyway. So I'm going to take the Giants with the 1.5 points. So those are my 3 picks for the week.